Joining me now from Tel Aviv is NBC News international correspondent Raf Sanchez. Raf, with welcome to you. So morning is broken there, and despite the size of the attack, there appears to be minimal damage inside of Israel. Tell us about the atmosphere on the ground right now in Israel. What's it like?
Well, Alex, there was real terror here last night. This was a slow-motion, unfolding attack. Israelis knew well before they went to bed last night that Iran had launched. At that point, it was just hundreds of drones. They knew it was going to take several hours for those drones to reach Israel. What they did not know is what would happen when they arrived. So there was real fear here overnight. This morning, I would say that has given way to a strong sense of relief. I'm just looking out over one of the main roads in Tel Aviv. It's kind of quiet but calm here. What we are not hearing, Alex, is a real clamor for retaliation against Iran from ordinary Israelis. People I've been speaking to here in Tel Aviv say they are relieved this is over. They don't want to see further escalation. But that obviously is going to be a decision that is up to Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu and the Israeli War Cabinet. They're meeting not far from here at the Defense Ministry as we speak. We have heard from some of the more far-right members of Israel's government that there should be a major response, but nothing that has been said by the Prime Minister or other members of the War Cabinet at this stage indicates that Israel is preparing to retaliate immediately. There is a lot of concern, Alex, for that 7-year-old girl from a Bedouin community down in the south of Israel. She suffered a very serious head wound from shrapnel. There was an interception overhead. Shrapnel fell on her house. She is in a hospital in the south of Israel now, and she is fighting for her life, according to doctors. In terms of the other damage caused by this attack overnight, I just spoke to an Israeli military spokesman. He says that there was limited damage at the Nevatim Air Base, which is down in the southern desert in Israel. He says none of those impacts, which were caused by ballistic missiles, are actually affecting the operations at that air base. It's a key base. It's where a lot of Israel's F-35s are based out of. He says there was no damage to those fighter aircraft or to any other aircraft as a result of that Iranian attack. And Alex, one of the first indications that ordinary Israelis had of how serious this was last night was Israel has a government plane. It's called the Wing of Zion. It's basically the equivalent of Air Force One. It carries senior Israeli government officials around. That plane took off from that southern air base around 10:30 last night, and it is pretty clear now in retrospect that they were getting that plane off the ground so it wouldn't be damaged by any of these incoming missiles or drones. But that was visible to Israelis on Flight Tracker, on other sites, and it was a first sign at how serious this attack might be. Alex.
Raf, I appreciate you updating us on what is happening right now with that war cabinet in Israel underway. I want to ask you about one statement we have gotten. It's from an Israeli official who essentially called Iran's attack a failure and said that Iran has made a mistake by exposing itself to the world. That kind of rhetoric, is there any concern about Iran not taking kindly to it and therefore creating further tension?
Yeah, I think, Alex, the U.S., President Biden making pretty clear to Prime Minister Netanyahu that they don't want to see further escalation, and I don't think it is helpful to have Israeli officials crowing, as it were. But the Iranians made pretty clear, even before any of those first drones or missiles landed last night, that this was, from their perspective, a one and done, that they considered this to be a proportional military response to what they say was that Israeli airstrike near their embassy in Damascus back on April 1st. That was a strike that killed seven senior members of the Revolutionary Guard, and Iran says it has the right to respond militarily to that. In terms of where Israel goes next, it is worth noting that the Israeli government has called for an emergency meeting of the UN Security Council. That appears to be an indication that, at least initially, they want to talk about this diplomatically. I think if Israel wanted to respond militarily, they could have done so overnight in the darkness. That didn't happen. Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu himself has been fairly quiet today. He put out just a single tweet in Hebrew, basically saying we stopped the attack and together we will win. He did not commit himself to any kind of large-scale military response, and we are expecting President Biden and other G7 leaders to meet today. So it looks like, for now, there is going to be a series of diplomatic meetings ahead, and there is nothing at this moment that indicates Israel is planning any kind of large-scale response. Alex.
Ralph Sanchez, excellent reporting. Thank you so much, my friend. Appreciate that.
Hey, everyone. MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.